When Melissa was at her best friend's sleepover, her best friend said that her attic was haunted. So one sleepover they put on their brave faces and they went to check it out. When they got there, they saw a mysterious black figure dash near the door and a white orb fly by. That was the last time that Melissa ever went to her best friend's house.
I'm gonna tell you guys about the dumbest thing I ever said when trying to be romantic. This happened a few years ago. I was on a date and things were going really well. So I decided to end the night with a really cheesy pickup line. I turned and faced him and looked into his deep brown eyes and said, "Is your middle name Google? Because I've been searching for you my whole life." I thought he would respond with a chuckle, but instead he kept a straight face and said, "Shoulda got a PC."
One time, Ladybot and her friends were hanging out outside when they found a driveway that had freshly poured wet cement. Ladybot was feeling mischievous, so she wrote "fart" in the cement. And as Ladybot and her friends laughed about it, the owner of the house came outside to confront them. They were caught red-handed, but Ladybot thought she'd still try to get out of trouble with an elaborate lie. She told the man that an evil, super intelligent monkey had escaped from Africa and was causing chaos around the neighborhood. She said the monkey was the one who'd written in the cement, and that Ladybot and her friends had actually saved the day by chasing it back to Africa. The man was stunned. In the end, he let them go, either because he believed her, or because he admired how ballsy the lie was.
In 10th grade, Gooby would overhear her friend say some pretty weird stuff. During math, she asked someone next to her about playing Club Penguin. Their response was to ask, "What's Club Penguin?" So Gooby's friend yelled, "You are the biggest disgrace of my life!" Another time, walked into class late after returning from a doctor's appointment and heard the words, "Water is wet because it is basically the god of wetness." Gooby doesn't even know what that conversation was about, but that was the moment she decided she wanted to make friends with that girl. They've been good friends ever since.
Ramona was at the store with her mom and they were finishing up when she remembered that she needed some pads. Ramona told her mom and they headed to the women's hygiene products aisle. Ramona then needed to use the bathroom, so she started to walk further down the aisle until her mom started screaming from the other end, "Sweetheart, large and cushy pads or small and flexible pads?" Everyone in the aisle and those passing by just stared at them and began laughing. Ramona couldn't look at her mom for the rest of the day, and she didn't talk to her for an entire week.
Zaraganba was bored one day and wanted to go upstairs. He rolled off the couch, laid down on his back, grabbed his iPad and Wendy's burger, then started scooting his way to the stairs on his back, yelling,
Making my way downtown, walking fast, faces past.
Suddenly, his mom cut him off. Zaraganba had forgotten that she was sitting on the couch because he was so into scooting his way to the stairs.
When Nixium was little, his friends used to tease him about being poor. One day, he and his friends were lining up to buy candy from the ice cream van in their street. Nixium's friends got a box of Maltesers each, but Nixium couldn't afford one. When Nixium's friends saw how sad Nixium looked, he decided to issue him a challenge. He dropped a Malteser in the drain and told Nixium he could have the whole box to himself if he picked it up and ate it. Without thinking, Nixium picked up the dirty, dusty, sewer-watery Malteser and popped it straight into his mouth. His friends and the ice cream man were so impressed and disgusted that they bought Nixium his own pack. That night, Nixium's parents found out what he did and screamed at him. He spent the whole night crying and trying to throw the gross sewer candy up.
A few years ago, Doopy dated an artist. At first, he was kind and sweet, but after a while, he turned into a total creep. He kept pestering Doopy for nude photos. When she told him no, he gave the excuse that he was making a comic book about his life and that he needed a picture of Doopy's boobs as a reference. Doopy told him to take a hike.
One time, Gooby was walking through a crowded hallway in her middle school. She noticed someone sneaking through the crowd with a box. She asked what was in the box, but the person dropped it and the lid fell off. The box was full of papers. Gooby looked down and saw that the papers were pictures of the girls at the school in their houses, sleeping. The pictures were taken from inside their rooms too. Gooby even saw her and her friends' own pictures in there. After that day, she decided to always lock her door and window and tell the police. And what the fuck?
2nd grade. Snack time. Melissa was enjoying her milk when she noticed something strange. Her best friend Gooby was putting paste all over her crackers. Melissa thought she was just being silly and laughed until Gooby took a big bite, chewed, and swallowed triumphantly. Melissa yelled for the teacher.
My friend is eating glue! She's gonna die!
The teacher ran over, took one look at her cracker crumb and glue-smeared face, and snatched up the bottle. He quickly read over all the ingredients and warning labels, but Gooby continued to chew. Melissa was surprised when her teacher just shrugged, placed the glue back on the table, and said, "Non-toxic." Gooby plopped another glue cracker sandwich into her mouth and grinned at Melissa. The teacher just patted her on the head and went back to his desk. "Just don't throw up, sweetie. We're having biscuits and gravy for lunch."
Pringle's neighbor has a very weird habit. He likes to walk around his house naked with the curtains wide open. His routine at night is to put on a movie, make up a big bag of popcorn, and then he stands in front of the kitchen window masturbating. Every 30 seconds he'll stop, he'll stuff a few pieces of popcorn into his mouth, then he goes right back to slapping his meat. Pringle's family have to keep their own curtains drawn every single night, so they don't get scarred for life.
When I was a kid, my dad used to secretly knock on the wall and tell us it was a being known as Bobo. It scared me and my sisters senseless. It didn't help that we had rats and sometimes you could hear them in the walls, so for 8 long years, I thought that a monster named Bobo lived in our walls.
Nixium is very competitive about being single. He personally keeps track of who from his high school has never had a boyfriend or girlfriend, and he intends to outlast them all and be the true king of loneliness. He's 25 and has still never had a girlfriend, but he has to wait for a few more people his age to find love before he can finally claim his loneliness trophy.
When Slaptam was about 8, he would sneak upstairs when nobody was home and eat lots of food. His parents had no idea until one day when they found a couple of drops of melted pineapple flavored Mr. Freeze on the carpet. At the time, they had 2 cats, and Slaptam lied and said that one of the cats had pissed on the carpet, and they believed him. After that, they never suspected a thing.
Back when Derek was in 4th grade, he had a weird thing he did whenever he was nervous or just really focused on something. He would pull off threads from his wool socks, put them in his mouth, and chew them until the end of class when he would spit them out in a wastebasket. The problem began to escalate halfway through the 4th grade when he began to swallow the threads. It gave him constipation issues and left huge holes in most of the socks. His mom and dad didn't notice the problem until about 9 months later. They asked him why he was getting so many pairs of socks ripped. He told them about it, and they made him buy 24 pairs of socks to replace the ones he ate. That ended Derek's sock chewing, and his chewed up socks were passed down to his little brother. When Zaragamba broke up with his long-term girlfriend, she revealed she had a secret crazy side. Firstly, she refused to accept that they were over, and followed Zaragamba around for months trying to convince him to get back together. Then, when Zaragamba found himself a new girlfriend, his ex started scheming to break them up. She called up his new girlfriend and told her Zaragamba and her were having an affair. This lie broke his new girlfriend's trust and ruined their relationship. Zaragamba still hasn't gotten over it.
Gergak was getting home late at night and his parents were out, so they got a babysitter. The babysitter was nice to his little sister, but whenever he was in the room, she was a complete bitch. So when Gergak walked into the house, he was wearing a scarf over his mouth and a leather jacket because it was snowing outside. The babysitter screamed and grabbed a chair and hit him over the head with it. He yelled and showed her it was just him, but she continued to break the chair over the back of his head. He had to get stitches, and for some reason, his parents praised her for defending herself against an intruder.
Back in high school, Sid worked at a taco stand in an amusement park. A week after he started working there, his boss threw a box of gloves on the counter in front of him. He told Sid to fill 5 with sour cream and 5 with ranch dressing. Thinking it was a joke, Sid ignored him, but then his boss came back about 10 minutes later and demanded to know where his gloves were. Nervous, he did what his boss told him to do. He tied the bottoms of the gloves shut before putting them in the refrigerator. It turned out that his boss only wanted the gloves filled so that he could squeeze the contents of each of them into the condiments bottles. Although Sid thought it was a smart idea in hindsight, he still wonders why his boss didn't just tell him in the first place.
Melissa and Zaragamba had been best friends since kindergarten. But when they hit high school, Melissa was shocked to discover that she had developed feelings for him. She didn't want to ruin their friendship, so she buried her feelings deep down, even though it hurt. One day, Zaraganba's football friend came up to Melissa and told her that Zaraganba had something really important to tell her after the game. Melissa went along to the game, but she didn't pay any attention. She couldn't stop thinking about what Zaraganba wanted to talk about. When the game finished, she was so desperate to talk to him that she rushed into the guy's extremely smelly locker room. Zaraganba saw her and gave a big speech about how he had been in love with her since back in the 6th grade. They started going out and have been together ever since. Melissa has never forgotten that day, or that gross locker room smell.
Hellbent was in an arcade with some friends. He excused himself to use the restroom, but when he got there, he found there was a huge line. Hellbent got in line and waited when suddenly a middle-aged man ran towards the bathroom, dragging his terrified-looking boy by the wrist. The man shouted,
"Make space for the boy, he's about to shit himself,"
and started barging people out of the way. The boy was really embarrassed, but to be fair, he looked about 10 seconds away from painting the walls brown. Hellbent just lost it.
Hellbent had a crush on a girl at his school. He didn't know much about her, but overheard her talking with her friends about how she loves scary movies, scary video games, and anything with gore in it. So he decided to anonymously send her a box, which contained the entrails of a pig. He watched while he smiled as she opened the box of blood and intestines, hoping she would love it. She didn't. In fact, she ran away vomiting and screaming. Unfortunately, she found out that Hellbent was a mystery sender and never spoke to him again. There's just no pleasing some deep.
When Civil Spider was in high school, he went to the big annual Valentine's Day party. That night, he saw a bunch of girls standing together getting ready to take a group photo. But in the distance, he also saw a group of boys preparing to photobomb them. Civil Spider watched as one of the guys ran in to photobomb them, but tripped and fell. As the guy was falling, he grabbed onto one of the girl's skirts to break his fall, pulling it down in the process. The girl was extremely embarrassed and smacked the guy right across the face.
When Spinal Palm was 6 years old, he and his older brother went to a local swimming pool with some friends. It was a hot day and the pool was packed. After about an hour, Spinal Palm's brother told him he should totally do a cannonball and make a big deal about it. So Spinal Palm exclaimed loudly to the pool that everyone should watch his cool cannonball, when suddenly next thing he knew, his brother ran past and yanked down Spinal Palm's swimming trunks. The 6-year-old Spinal Palm stood there in a crowded pool with his wiener on display for everyone to see. He quietly pulled his shorts back up, got in the pool, and pretended like it never happened.
Mimi and her cousin were little when their parents took them to Disney World one time. They were having a good time at the park, experiencing the attractions and meeting the characters. As they continued to walk around, Mimi's cousin stopped in the middle of the path. He pulled down his pants and started peeing. Even though he was only a small child, Mimi still thought it was a dumb thing to do.
When Dolan was 9, he came home from school one day to find a strange woman there and not his mother. He thought nothing of it and found out she was the babysitter, but she had this really weird look that just made his hair stand on end. A while later, she cooked dinner, and having only his mother cook for him, Dolan didn't eat it. When she saw him push his dinner away, he screamed like a freaking banshee, "You eat this or I'll shove it down your throat!" He just sat there like a mouse about to die and slowly picked at his food. Dolan was so terrified that as soon as she turned away, he bolted to his room, locked the door, and tried to calm down. He pissed himself 2 times and had pee running down his legs as the creepy woman kept beating the crap out of his door. Thank God his mom showed up 45 minutes later and found the babysitter kicking and punching his door. Dolan never trusted those demons again.
When Slapped Ham was 8, he got a new English teacher. She would say words out loud and then tell them to read the words on the paper. Slapped Ham was dyslexic, and so when the teacher asked him to read out the words, he couldn't. That was not only because he was dyslexic, but because it was a different language as he had come from Italy. He tried again and again until she started to scream at him, "Can't you read?" She called his parents and said, "Your son doesn't want to work." Slapped Ham's parents explained that he was dyslexic, and she did the same thing over and over and over until they finally left to go to Australia.
One time in elementary school, Pringle told his friends that he was born in a hay cart because on Heritage Day, nobody knew what or where El Salvador was. So Pringle decided to have some fun and said,
Before I moved here from El Salvador, I was born in a hay cart because my mom couldn't get to the doctors in time.
They started asking about why his mom was driving a hay cart. He said,
We aren't that advanced yet, but soon we will be.
Pringle also lied about having asthma because of all the hay in the cart, and they believed it. Eventually, they knew he was lying about having asthma because of the hay, but to this day, they still believe everything else.
So when Tulip was in 7th grade, he had to poop, so he went to the bathroom. All the stalls were occupied, but then someone else came in the bathroom while Tulip was waiting for a stall. The kid who came into the bathroom said, "I can't wait this long." He then pulled down his pants and took a shit in the urinal. Before he was done, one of the stalls opened. The guy saw the kid shitting in the urinal and walked out saying, "What the fuck?"
One Christmas, when Spences was 13 years old, she was on a train returning from her English exams. While riding the train, a man entered her carriage and sat down. He started praying loudly to something named Nikas, then shouted at everyone in the carriage that Satan and Nikas will join forces and kill them all. He continued praying loudly and cursing at people. After some minutes, the man told everyone to become organ donors and wished that they all die in the worst way.
During summer break when Mimi was 5, her mother asked a lady who lived across the street from them to babysit like she usually did. The lady came over but sat on the couch and began to drink a bottle of wine until she got drunk, something she would normally do. That time though, Mimi asked her to stop drinking, but the lady smashed the bottle on the floor and said, "Okay, I will, you whore." She then proceeded to poop on the floor. Mimi was so disgusted that she was about to throw up when she heard glass shattering next to her. It turned out that the lady got mad at Mimi because there was poop on the floor and had started throwing bottles at her. Luckily, her mom came home and pepper sprayed the babysitter, then grabbed Mimi and took her outside where she called the police.
Gergak went to a party with his best friend. His friend isn't usually a heavy drinker, so after a few he was completely smashed. Gergak didn't drink at all and drove him home. The next morning, Gergak got a phone call from him. Panicked and crying, he said, "Help, man! There's a cookie cutter stuck up my ass!" Supposedly, while he was drunk, he shoved a star-shaped cookie cutter up his ass, thinking it would make his shit look like a star. Ghost Toast was working one day when he overheard a customer say, "You need a bigger shop." Ghost Toast didn't think that was anything strange until the customer followed up with, "And by the way, stop putting rats in the shampoo."
One day when she was in college, Froggy was eating her lunch while talking to a friend of hers, Mimi, about a project. Suddenly, Froggy noticed 3 guys cussing at each other. Turned out that they were fighting over the last slice of pizza from Little Caesars. One guy pinned another and the pizza fell onto the floor. The guy who had pinned the other picked up the slice of pizza and ate it despite it being on the dirty, grimy floor. Mimi looked at Froggy and asked if that guy seriously ate something that fell on the floor, and Froggy nodded.
Robo worked at a movie theater as a cleaner, cleaning the cinemas, the bathrooms, and everything else. One day, she was in charge of checking the woman's bathroom every half hour, just to make sure there wasn't a huge mess. As Robo entered one of them, a woman followed her in and asked her, "Excuse me, where's the bathroom?" Robo stared at her for a moment to see if she was joking, but she was actually serious. The woman patiently waited for Robo, so she just pointed towards the stalls. The woman looked at them and said with a smile, "Oh, I thought this was the boys' room. Thanks so much." Then she walked out of the bathroom.
Sid was 12 when he wanted attention. He was so desperate for it that he concocted a plan involving the 2 old metal cellar doors in his backyard that led to the basement. His bedroom window was right above the doors, so at night, after the lonely, sad days he would sometimes have, Sid tied a thin piece of string to the handles of the cellar doors. From his room, he lifted the doors to make a sound, as though there was an intruder. His dad would jump up from the bed and grab a bat after hearing the creaking and banging of the cellar doors. He would always check on Sid on his way to the basement. His plan came crashing down once his dad discovered a piece of string left on the cellar door, with the other end of it in Sid's trash can. He was grounded for a whole month.
Ladybot met this guy who was older, like way older, which is fine because she likes older men. They went on a date to a nice restaurant and were laughing and having fun until she looked at the door and saw a lady run in. Ladybot was confused but also excited, thinking that she's gonna see this guy or some girl get busted cheating. But she runs up to their table and yells at Ladybot's date. Come to find out, that was his wife, and she was screaming and yelling. He got her out of there because she was getting violent. They got in his car and he explained that him and his wife were still married but were getting divorced. which Ladybot understood, and they've been together ever since. Now she has a great stepson.
Gergak worked at a movie theater, and in 4 years there he saw plenty of weirdos. But the one that really stands out is a woman who came in and bought a bag of Skittles. She was having a bit of trouble opening the package, so Gergak was trying to show her the seam on the top of the bag to tear from. Every time he tried to help, she stopped him and said, "I can do this, thanks. I'm not stupid." With that, she kept fighting the bag, eventually throwing it against the wall in frustration. That was enough to open it, and it shot Skittles all over the lobby. Gergak and his co-workers had to clean up the woman's mess. Then she had the nerve to ask for a free one because of what happened. They had to ask her to leave after that. It was annoying at the time, but they all laughed about it for the rest of the workday. As a kid, I always loved amusement parks. The rides, the food, the prizes, the weirdos. It's a good time all around. Problem is, as a kid, you don't get to ride all the really fun stuff. You're just a little bit too short. One day, I had enough of all the dumb rules, so I snuck past the guy who checked your height and got into line on a really big ride. So about this ride, it wasn't anything too fancy. It just shot you up in the air about 200 stories, then slowly let you down. I was really excited. It was the tallest ride there. You could see the entire city from the top. It was gonna be beautiful. So I got on, pulled the bar over me, and just got ready for a good time. It was gonna be exciting. Turns out the ride was a little bit more exciting than I bargained for. As I got in and it shot me up into the air, I noticed that the restraint wasn't quite restraining me. As the ride shot up into the air, I was slowly slipping out from under the restraint, and I just had to hold on for dear life, hoping that I wouldn't slip out. Of course, nobody noticed my struggle, as we were already about 100 stories in the air. Nobody was paying attention anyways. So there I was, holding on for dear life as the ride shot up and down and up and down and up and down. Then the ride finally hit the top, where the person next to me noticed I was having a little bit of trouble staying alive. The sheer terror kinda took away from my enjoyment of the beautiful view ahead of me. Then finally, the ride took one last drop, and this drop was fast. I was holding onto the bar, and thankfully the person next to me had a grip on my t-shirt, making sure I don't fly out of the chair. When the ride finally hit the ground, I thanked the man who saved my life, and then went off to the arcade to go play some video games. I had enough excitement for that day.
Not many people know this, but Honeybits is terrified of spiders. One time in her freshman year, she stayed up until 2 a.m. because she seen a small spider in her room several hours earlier. When she woke up and went to school, she was too tired to even think, which is a problem because she happened to have her most hated class, algebra. Halfway through the lesson, she asked the teacher if she could be excused to use the bathroom. She sat on the toilet and started daydreaming. Before she knew it, she was out like a light. After a while, her classmates came into the girls' bathroom and called out for Honeybits. Honeybits woke up and was extremely embarrassed. Luckily, her teachers was very understanding, but Honeybits' classmates gave her a lot of crap about falling asleep on the can.
Princess Proton was in a store with her mom when she saw one of her friends from school. She went up to her friend and left her mom to shop alone for a few minutes. Just then, she heard a store announcement say, "Attention all shoppers! Can Princess Proton come to the women's section to tell her mother what brand of pads she uses? Thank you very much." Princess Proton was already embarrassed, and she later learned that even more people she knew were also at the store, and the announcement had used her full name.
When M. Kyle M. was 11, him and his family went to Gettysburg for a reenactment of the Civil War. Now, since it was a reenactment, they had to sleep in tents. During the night, he had to use the restroom, and when he was done, he started to walk back to his tent. It was really quiet and dark, so M. Kyle M., well, he ran to the campground, but then he stopped to see a man in a Civil War jacket with a bloody face. M. Kyle M. was so scared, he couldn't move. The man started walking towards him, so he started to run, but when M. Kyle M. blinked, the man was right in front of him. He was so scared, he couldn't move, and he couldn't breathe. And then the man said in a scary voice, "You shouldn't have come here." M. Kyle M. screamed so loud that the whole campground woke up. His mom ran to see what was wrong. When she asked him what was wrong, he answered, "The
men in the Civil War check and said we shouldn't have come here.
That's when the whole campground flew off the handle.
During a school field trip, Emoji once visited an old castle to learn the history of medieval times. The teacher wanted the students to buddy up, but since there were an odd number, Emoji was left out. Eventually, Emoji got distracted and noticed his class was gone. A kind man in a robe appeared out of nowhere and offered his hand. He looked nice enough, so Emoji walked with him for what felt like hours. He noticed it was getting dark, so he asked the man if he actually knew where his teacher was. The man looked down, smiled with tears in his eyes, and whispered, "Sorry," and his head fell off. Emoji screamed and ran away, but not before seeing his body disappear into thin air. He found his class, but nobody ever believed his story.